I'm Rob Downey, a family practice MD and Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner. I'm coming to you from Seaworthy Functional Medicine in Homer, Alaska. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital.
What if we could do things for ourselves and our health that don't require drugs or procedures, and it would mean until the end of our lives, we would retain the same ability we had at the beginning of our lives to never have messy, unpleasant things happen, like losing urine or stool, as well as having excellent core strength and having excellent sexual health. We couldn't be more fortunate than to be joined today by Jana Danielson, a Pilates instructor and expert in pelvic floor health. Welcome, Jana. Thanks so much for your time today.
Dr. Rob, thanks for having me here.
I'm really excited for today. And as we got ready for today's presentation, I realized that I need to remind the men in our audience who've made it to this point in the conversation, do not drop out. This is for you as well, whether it involves having good sexual health, preventing erectile dysfunction, getting some ground back, being a good and supportive partner. If you have a female partner with a female pelvic floor and need to know more about what the journey is like for that person. So there's a lot of places we could start here, but perhaps, Jana, we do need to start with a pain point. There's this whole multi-billion-dollar industry around drugs and procedures for something that a lot of people could avoid. Is that accurate?
It's so accurate. And if we wanted to get, laser focused, just two stats that I like to share to put this into perspective, because I feel like pelvic floor conversations don't happen. I feel like people are muted about what they're experiencing, and just the erectile drug industry and the incontinence product industry are respectfully a $9 billion and a $21 billion industry. Just the two: erectile, dysfunction drugs, $9 billion; incontinence products, $21 billion. That does not account for all, like you said, all the other medical procedures and other forms of interventions that we are told are the fix for this form of dysfunction, which really is furthest from the truth. And I had a Jerry Maguire moment. You guys remember that movie with Tom Cruise, Jerry Maguire, where, him and Renee Zellweger, and they say, you had me at hello. I had a Jerry Maguire moment probably about 10 years ago now. I was at a conference and was listening to a urogynecologist speak about pelvic floor dysfunction. It was at a Pilates conference where there were a lot of physiotherapists, and he said that in 90% of pelvic floor dysfunction cases, those people, 9 out of 10, could actually heal or fix their body through movement and proper movement education, whereas only 1 out of those 10 people would have to go down a medical route to gain some sort of treatment to fix that issue. And it really, it stopped me, because I was like, wait, as a Pilates instructor, I originally thought, what can I really do to help people with pelvic floor health? I can help them to learn how to breathe properly and that. But when I heard that stat, it completely shifted the whole story for me, because now I had the ability, with my knowledge and expertise, to start the conversation, to educate and empower and inspire men and women to learn a little bit more about this part of their body, which for many, many years, we just chalk up to aging, or the fact that someone had a baby, or someone's in menopause, or someone is post-prostate cancer. These are just things that we're supposed to expect. And you know what? Maybe, but maybe not.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that you're doing what you do and that we're getting to have this conversation today. I thank our audience for joining us. And it's a timely conversation because it's one that hasn't happened in the Seaworthy podcast setting yet. So it's a chance to get the word out. And the title of the podcast, and Exploration of Functional Medicine, is very deliberate because it is an exploration. In this particular instance, I think some of the courage that's necessary, what I see in my patients is a lot of sort of shame around anything that involves the pelvis or, plumbing and hardware down there. And then of course, we have millions of people presuming through the conventional medical lens that they're fated to have a host of ills that aren't fate at all. And so I'm just so glad that you're here to shed light on this for everybody. I should briefly mention we'll hear from you about what the pelvic floor means. From my perspective, it's the muscle and fascia at the base of the pelvis. And I should mention, as we segue in, often part of what my patients run into is they're used to, they can see their bicep. So when their trainer tells them, hey, if you want to have upper arm strength, do curls. But until they have somebody with Pilates training or dance training or core training or Kundalini yoga or something, they don't ever tighten the pelvic floor and actually feel that part of themselves. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we're becoming fast friends, Dr. Rob. You're speaking my language. Yes, 100%. I think that who has ever woken up in the morning and thought to themselves, maybe you think I need to get outside and go for my walk, or I need to go to the gym or get on my bike or get my mat out and do my Pilates or yoga. I don't think many people think to themselves, okay, I gotta get my pelvic floor work today. We don't think about that until there is an issue that maybe we've ignored for a little bit because we don't see the change like you talked about in the bicep muscle. And because we are disconnected, and I just want to loop back to something that you said earlier, and we're not really talking about this part of our body. I want to mention, and this might be a little bit, I hope it's not too out there for your audience, but I feel like when I learned this fact, it put so much of the pelvic floor enigma or, ecosystem into perspective for me. So there's a nerve, and we can talk about this more later, but the main nerve that runs from the brain down through this part of our body, the pelvic floor, the genitals, is called the pudendal nerve. All right. Now, the pudendal nerve has an important job. It's got two big jobs. It's a motor nerve, so it sends messages to and from those two areas. And it's also a sensory nerve, which means that it feels the entire spectrum from pleasure to pain. Well, I learned about a year ago that the Latin root for the word pudendal means ashamed. And talk about a mic drop moment. I was like, hey, wait a minute. The main nerve that sends feelings and messages from the brain to this really important part of our body is rooted in the word ashamed. And I think it's naive to think that this is just a physical problem. Like I'm peeing my pants a bit, or as a man, I can't get an erection, or I've got, this low back pain. We would be very naive to think that the physicality of the pelvic floor is where the story started and ended, because there is emotionality there. We take, there's a lot of trauma that can be experienced in that area. And there's a lot of energy in that area. You mentioned Kundalini yoga, like the root chakra, the base energy center that keeps us grounded, safe, and secure, is also located within that bony structure. So I like to frame this for, the audience that I'm talking to, that I want to encourage you to go beyond that physical symptom that you might be experiencing and understand that from a functional perspective, this is not just like a one-trick pony. The body is systems that interact. And once we get to the root of something like pelvic floor dysfunction, it could improve circulation. It could improve bloating. It could improve elimination. It could improve sleep. So talk about function. This area has a lot of impact on a lot of how the body functions.
Excellent. It's exciting. It's an exciting opportunity for for all of us and for the people we care about. And I think if Dr. Keisha Ewers was part of today's conversation, she'd kind of talk also about the energies of the root chakra and how it's our connection to the earth and how we're grounded. And so many of us have a lot, it's a rich area to explore compassionately and realize in comparison to, well, you're discussing as we got ready for today about coming from Canada, me from the United States, now you're in Mexico. I think a lot of other cultures, maybe Westerners, have a lot of hangups around, the pelvis and pelvic health and the root chakra, and a lot of healing to do there. So I think there's an amplification of effect for anybody that explores the practices you encourage.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you want to, maybe let's take this conversation, because there could be people in the audience saying like, okay, what are you talking about? Where is this? Right?
Yeah, right.
This happens, right? Is we get going and then we're like, hey, we just missed,
I buried the lead despite my enthusiasm. So let's do that part.
Oh, I love that.
I'm ready. We're ready.
Right. Okay. So at the end of the day, the pelvic floor is a group of muscles in the bowl of the pelvis. So if you put your hands on your hips, that's your pelvis, right? And at the base of it, it's like this little hammock, your pelvic floor. Men and women have pelvic floors. The function of the pelvic floor is to not only hold up our, pelvic organs, rectum, the bladder, in a woman, a uterus. It also has a function in walking, in elimination, in childbirth, in sexual intercourse. So there's lots that goes on there. And what a lot of people don't realize is that your pelvic floor is actually a part of your core. So I like to share this because I think a lot of people, when you hear the word core or strength, you need to get a stronger core, you might think, okay, I need to get down on the floor and I need to do some crunches or some sit-ups, because our core is our abdominals. And that is partially correct. But I like to use the analogy of the apple. So if I'm eating an apple, what's left of the apple is the core. There's the top of the core with the stem. And in our body, that part is our diaphragm. So the main muscle of respiration that sits right inside of our rib cage. So it's right inside of our rib cage, just right there. It is like an open umbrella or a mushroom cap. All right. So think of that as the ceiling of the core. The pelvic floor, directly located below it, is the floor of our pelvic floor. Now we need to get some walls for this house, right? So the walls are the 4 sets of abdominals. They include the rectus abdominis that live right under the skin of our body. And that's where I want to bust this myth, is that we've been told for decades that, if you're fit, you can see that 6-pack muscle. Chase that 6-pack for your whole life. And I'm here to tell you that that is actually not true. Functionally, that 6-pack muscle sits you up out of bed, lays you back down, stands you up after you tie your shoes, bends you over when you go and take your shoes off. It doesn't do a lot, yet we've given it this this shiny, sparkly persona that means fit, and it's not true. Deeper to the 6-pack are 2 groups of muscles called the internal and external obliques. All right. These 2 muscles work in partnership with each other, and they form in the front of the body like a letter X, right? So if you're going to, throw a ball to your kid or do a shoulder check when you're driving, those are your obliques that are turning you and side bending you. Deepest to that is the transverse abdominis. Now, this muscle is like, if you were going to be investing in your abdominals as stocks, put all your money into the transverse abs, because they impact the most around our wealth, our health, our wealth, our wellness, all of that, our posture, all of that. And health really is wealth, I think. Now, this abdominal muscle actually starts in our low back on either side of the spine, and it wraps around our body like one of those big, thick weight training belts or a corset. And this muscle gives us shape. This muscle protects our spine. This muscle, works along with the organs, and forms the 360-degree cylinder of our core. So now we have the diaphragm atop, the pelvic floor is the floor, and this abdominal cylinder that make our core. When we have a lack of breath, okay, so many of us have become, we feel this need to be running away from the saber-toothed tiger all the time. We have this sustained level of stress in our life that we just operate at. What happens at that point is what's called our sympathetic nervous system. It's like, oh, he's in danger. She's in danger. She's got this mile-long to-do list. You know, her in-laws are coming to visit. She's got to make that, you know, she's got to make that loan payment. Oh, she's got to, you know, her just got a call from the school. Like there's all these things going on in people's bodies. And the brain and the body don't know the difference between that saber-toothed tiger and all this other stress. So the sympathetic nervous system kind of freaks out a bit. It sends into the body the stress hormones, right? Adrenaline, cortisol, and we stop using that big, beautiful mushroom cap to breathe, right? Think of a newborn baby. Watch their belly rise and fall with every breath. They are the most pure diaphragmatic breathers on the planet. And then we become upright. Then we become teenagers. Then we learn about fashion. Then we learn about, you know, body image, all these things. And we start sucking and holding and making that part of our body as tight as we can. So the diaphragm can't do its job. But because the body's so brilliant, we have these secondary breathing muscles in our neck, the scalenes and sternocleidomastoids, and they're like, oh, you need help breathing? We'll help. Guess what? That's what turns into your chronic neck tension, your low-grade headaches, your TMJ issues, because these little muscles already have a job. They're holding this bowling ball up on your spine. And now you're saying, oh yeah, and by the way, in your spare time, can you breathe for this, you know, these 70 trillion plus cells? Can you keep them, you know, oxygenated? So we stop using the diaphragm. And what happens, because the diaphragm, as I told you, is directly above the pelvic floor takes cues. It thinks, oh, diaphragm's not needed. Maybe I'm not needed. So it becomes this unused, you know, mass of muscle. As you mentioned before, the fascial tissue starts to respond to that. We become absent of oxygen-rich, nutrient-rich blood to that area. And now you got a snowball rolling downhill. And nobody thinks that their headaches, their bloating, their constipation, their sciatica, their cold, tingly feet, their low-grade back pain is actually rooted in a pelvic floor that is not functioning. No one thinks that. They'd rather go to the drugstore, get that over-the-counter medication to stop the pain, but not get to the root cause. So there is your, hopefully you can see that apple core, you can understand how all the pieces correspond so that the rest of our conversation can be so much more rich for you because you understand where it's located.
That's awesome. Absolutely awesome. Yeah, there's motivation.
Thank you. Yeah. And you know, it, in the other fact is that we live on a planet with gravity, right? So we have this pull, this downward pull. So as we age, people come to expect that floor of the core to start to become dysfunctional. In a lot of women, let's just talk about the girls for a bit. The pelvic organs can start to descend. All right. So you may have, you know, with your audience, you may have heard of a prolapse, a uterine prolapse, right? Well, what does that mean? Why does that happen to some women and not to others? When the supporting structure of that floor becomes unable to do its job, and we live on this planet with gravity, and we don't have the best posture, and we wear not great shoes, and we don't sleep well, and, you know, all these things, those organs are going to start to descend. And so a prolapse can happen in 4 grades, grade 1 through grade 4. Grade 1, I've actually had a grade 1 prolapse. I'm a huge supporter of pelvic floor physical therapy. And when I used to own my integrated wellness clinic, I had a pelvic floor physiotherapist on staff, and I went like twice a year. And I had a really bad cold when I went to see her. And she did her internal exam of me, and she's like, Jana, you have a grade 1 prolapse. And I was like, how does the Pilates pelvic floor girl have a prolapse? And she's like, it happens quite easily when when there's a lot of coughing and sneezing, and there's this intra-abdominal downward pressure on the pelvic floor, it can start to get characteristics of prolapse. So what I want to tell your audience is that we know with certainty that a grade 1 and a grade 2 prolapse can be reversed. All right. Grade 3 prolapse, how do you know you have this? At grade 3, you start feeling a lot of pressure in the lower part of your abdomen. All right. And that's the weight of those organs. The organs are descending downward toward the vaginal opening. And then a grade 4 is actually, there is organ tissue that is outside of the body. Grade 3 and grade 4 are a little more challenging. We can't turn back the hands of time once your uterus is outside of your body. We can slow the hands of time, and we can support the musculature around so that the prolapse doesn't, get worse too quickly. And often at that point, there is some medical intervention that's required, pelvic floor physiotherapy for sure. And that's why I want to just say that for a lot of people, men included, we hear the Kegel as the solution, right? Do your Kegels, do your Kegels, do your Kegels. And a lot of Kegels are taught as, think about stopping the flow of urine. And I know right now, many of, your audience is feeling this. So if you think about stopping the flow of urine, feel that in your body, and then start the flow of urine. Do you feel the contrast between stopping the flow of urine? There's lots of tension there. We're holding, and then letting the flow of urine go, we're releasing. There is no other muscle in our body that we would ever train that way. You talked about biceps earlier, Dr. Rob. I would never say to someone in a Pilates class, all right, I want you to make a muscle and let it go. Make a muscle and let it go. I would never train any part of my body that way. We work through ranges of motion, right? So why are we training the pelvic floor that way when, in most cases, men and women, based on their chronically tight hips, their low-grade back pain, their undesirable posture, already have a pelvic floor that we call hypertonic, too much tone, all right? So someone that's super anxious, both of us know what it's like driving on icy highways. You know that feeling when you start to lose control, everything clenches. Well, there's a lot of people that actually live with that clench sensation 24/7. So to ask them to then do Kegels to squeeze more tension into an already tight pelvic floor, it's just going to exacerbate all of the issues that person might be feeling. So not all pelvic floors are in the same situation. And that's why it's important to understand that a functional muscle knows when to work and it knows when to rest. And unless you know what you need to start with, do I need more relax, or do I need more work? What does my body need to learn? Until you learn where you are, you could actually be making the issues worse.
Fantastic. So what do people do?
What do we do? All right. So I have something super simple. I call it my 3 Bs. All right. So the first thing is breath. And we talked about that diaphragm earlier in our conversation together. And even if today the only thing that you did, if you were, and I don't think I'm a true believer that you're not listening to this podcast by chance. There's a reason that those of you that are here are here. And when you learn how to breathe diaphragmatically, it's like giving CPR to your pelvic floor. It really is. And so just really quickly walking you through, what does it feel like to breathe with our diaphragm? If you put your hands on your body, one hand goes here on this flat bone called your sternum, and one hand, you can't see my bottom hand, but it's on my belly button. And if you were to breathe in through your nose like you were smelling a fresh baked plate of like chocolate chip cookies, your goal is to try and fill the bottom hand. The top hand really doesn't move much. I want to just say this little asterisk, okay? If the top hand is moving more than the bottom hand, you are what I call one of my little goldfish breathers. You're using your gills as your main muscle of respiration. We got to reteach the body how to let these guys be like the best supporting actor, and let's focus on the diaphragm. So when you breathe in through your nose, the goal is to fill the bottom palm with air. And when you exhale out of your mouth, the mouth is open. You try and pull that belly button just so gently, softly away from the bottom hand. So this hand is like your checkpoint. Inhale, when you breathe in, think of filling the waistband of your pants or your shorts. And on the exhale, think of drawing away from the waistband on all 360 degrees. This is diaphragmatic breathing, all right? It is not obvious. We think it should be, but it's not. Some people have to work at retraining. For those of you who haven't really breathed this way, physiologically, you're going to get a little lightheaded, because when we breathe with our gills, our brains are chronically lacking oxygen. They're in a state of oxygen deprivation. So when you start breathing diaphragmatically, you're going to get a little lightheaded, like maybe after a glass or two of wine, because you're flooding your brain with this beautiful oxygen that it can start use. So now you can say maybe adios to your brain fog. Like, did I send that text, or where did I put my car keys? Because brain fog is an outcome of a brain that doesn't have enough oxygen. All right. So if that's the one thing somebody from, listening to this podcast takes away, that is actually enough to start retraining the pelvic floor. 10 to 12 diaphragmatic breaths as soon as you wake up, 10 to 12 in the middle of the day, 10 to 12 when you put your head on your pillow. And the other bonus is that the parasympathetic nervous system, which is like that, bring you down a few notches, is getting a great big juicy hug because of the diaphragmatic breathing. So that's number one, okay? Breath. Number two is body position. So your posture matters, all right? Think back to like maybe your grade 3 teacher where, she or he might have told you to always sit up straight in your desk. They weren't wrong, all right? Where our bones are located really impacts our pelvic floor. So when we're standing, most people stand with about 80% of their weight forward on their toes. All right. What this does is it puts a lot of stress at the front of the body, the quadricep muscles, the muscle between the hip and the knee. It puts a lot of requirement into the calf muscle at the back of the leg between the knee and the ankle. It basically turns off our big glute muscles, the butt muscles. It turns off our hamstring muscles, and we hang our body on our bones, and we let our back take a lot of unnecessary stress and tension. The optimal weight distribution through our feet is 60% of our weight back in that big calcaneus, that big heel bone, 40% across the widest part of the foot called the metatarsals. So not the toe pads, but where the toes connect into the foot, they're called your metatarsals. Those are our weight. It's like a triangle, basically, right? The big calcaneus, and then up to the big toe knuckle and the baby toe knuckle, and then across. So we get this tripod of support. That's where in standing, when you feel that 60-40, you know that the bones above the feet are where they should be, and the pelvic floor is being supported, instead of when you're in that 80-20, the pelvic floor is kind of being hung out to dry, right? There's not a lot of bony structural support for it. So what it usually does is it tightens up because it needs to hold, right? And that's what can start to cause a lot of, the pelvic floor pain, the pain during intercourse, the coughing and sneezing and peeing a little bit, the erectile dysfunction. So it's important to know where your posture is. And then the third B in my B trifecta is blood flow. And we talked about blood flow before. And that's where the idea for the cooch and the gooch ball came from, because as a Pilates instructor, I would do these sold out workshops for my clients. No one would make eye contact with me. No one would ask questions. And yet there would be a lineup of women and men waiting to talk to me after the workshop, because I had just, it sounded like I was talking directly to them and what they were living with. So blood flow is really important. How do we get blood flow there? Well, that's where the cooch ball was born. I'm the mom of 3 boys. And so I did some training with a urogynecologist. I have my Pilates training. I knew that any muscle that's lacking blood flow is going to become dysfunctional. I knew that when fascial tissue doesn't have good hydration and, released. If it's not released, it's going to constrict blood flow away from those muscles. And so I thought, what could we put in between the legs, keeping it external as a fitness tool, right? Because there's lots of internal tools that you can use for women. And I should say for men, there is physical therapy for men as well for pelvic floor. The access point is anally. All right. There's one way in for a woman for pelvic floor, in through the vagina, and for the men, it's anally. All right. So I wanted to keep this a fitness tool that someone could throw in their gym bag or throw in their suitcase or have at work. And is it okay if I show it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So this is it. This is as simple as it is. So cooch ball. Okay. It is a patented pelvic floor fitness tool. What's special about this ball is what you don't see. It's kind of like with the pelvic floor. We don't see it. What's in between the bladder of the ball and the outer layer is a really cool layer of nylon thread that we wrap around the bladder of the ball in a really unique pattern. Because what this ball had to do was sustain the weight of an adult. You can see that it's a little squishy, and that's how you want to use it so that we don't trigger that sympathetic nervous system. Because if you sit on something that's really painful, your sympathetic nervous system is going to be like alarm bells, alert, alert, alert. You're going to get all these little, mechanisms that are going to hold you or protect you and not allow the melting through that fascial tissue so that oxygen-rich blood can get to those tissues. So that's what it is, right? It's you sit on the ball and you work your way up to 3 minutes. Some of my clients start with 15 seconds because there's something called the ouch factor. Now, the ouch factor is a direct relationship to the health of the pelvic floor. It's biofeedback. The body's telling us what's going on. When you sit on this ball, allowing your breath to be your guide, if you're breathing erratic or you're holding your breath, you got to either get onto your couch or your mattress, something a little more spongy to absorb some of the brunt of the ball. And then you work your way from there. As long as you are breathing with your diaphragm, focusing on the pelvic floor as you sit on it, could be on the floor, could be on a chair, like I said, on your bed, on a couch. That's where the magic is happening. We cannot change the strength or the function of a muscle if the environment that muscle is living in is not conducive to the change, right? So breathing will help, yes. Improving your posture will help, yes. And the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae is getting that level of blood flow up. It's like a plant. When a plant is not getting the sunlight it needs and the water it needs, eventually you're going to see the vigor in the leaves start to decrease. It's not going to flower. It might not, grow as optimally as we would like it to. It's the exact same thing. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not just, words of wisdom for your pelvic floor. It is for, the 680 plus muscles in your entire body. Headaches, you didn't just roll, the dice, and you weren't just unlucky that you are a headache person. There's something rooted there. What is it? Is it tight fascia? Is it posture? Is it hydration? And that's what I would love, to challenge you on today is be a pain seeker. I feel like we are so adverse to pain these days. We just want to get rid of the pain. Yet the pain is a message from some part of our body saying, help, I'm not okay. And then we just mute it and we think it's going to go away until that, over-the-counter medication wears off. And there it is again. Our body is brilliant. Learn about it, be intrigued by it, be inspired by it, be humbled by it, and take these slow and steady wins the race strategies to reframing. It doesn't matter how many birthday candles were on your last cake. It doesn't matter how many kids you have or what your job is. It doesn't matter. What matters is you make the choice every day to be hydrated, to notice where you are in space, to think positive thoughts, to do your like all these things. Just start with the one thing that could be a moment that can lead to momentum.
It's a great time to invoke the father of functional medicine, Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who said that the amount he said in his book, The Disease Delusion, the normal degree to which we change over years and decades is very little. So our birthright is to have very little change into a highly advanced age. And the types of things that you're sharing your wisdom about today do that. And they're really high yield. I very much would encourage people to listen to what Jana's sharing, that one thing that happens in this era, particularly around so many people now focused on trauma healing, is some of them are conflating trauma healing with leaning away from pain. And it can be super important to create a safe space to, to do the work, but we're built to be stressed to heal. So there's kind of a related principle in Buddhist psychology: no mud, no lotus. I mean, we need some pain and suffering to, grow these beautiful manifestations of our healing and our resilience and our strength. And then also Dr. Jeff Bland again, the right thing in the right place at the right time. That's what I really flashed on strongly while you were sharing today. And I think if people resonate with these issues of not wanting to have some of these debilities, which are a drag, erectile dysfunction, advanced prolapse, reliance on medications for sexual health and that sort of thing after 50, these things are all a drag for folks when they articulate them to me. And it's a precious jewel worth desiring to avoid that. And then because it's functional medicine, when you do the types of things that Jana's describing, then you get all these other benefits. And this shows up in her tradition clearly, but it shows up in the great wisdom traditions around yoga and meditation as well as the core and balancing and the root chakra. And so it's just incredibly high yield with, as Jana described, these shocking degrees to which it ramifies out through the rest of our health and vitality. So transformational.
Well, and the other thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that we're starting to see pelvic floor dysfunction in children, right? We just made it through a global pandemic where, the messaging to our kids was, don't be close to your friends, don't be, all of this, right? And so I just want to mention, because a lot of people don't realize that I've actually helped quite a few parents with their 10, 11, 12-year-old kids who are wetting the bed. And, they tried seemingly everything. And yet, when they get on the cooch ball and realize that those little pelvic floors are like a rock wall, that messaging that there is a disruption to the brain. And so we need to understand that this it's not just an aging issue, right? There's nothing as we've learned, right? In 90% of the cases in a man's body, there's nothing wrong with that man. There's nothing wrong with his brain. He just may have a muscle that's too tight to allow for, to allow for an erection. How can blood flow get through, a barrier? It can't. And so we see relationships break up. We see men who go into major depression, have major anxiety, start relying on this crutch. And, the other thing that's really important, and I'm going to just direct this toward the guys, a little bit of education, is that in a lot of those little blue and pink pills that are prescribed for erectile dysfunction, there is lab created nitric oxide. All right. And that's what it's a vasodilator. You get a lot of blood flow, right? We create that molecule in our body. We create nitric oxide just by breathing through our nose and out of our mouth properly. Okay. We create that in our body. And so understanding some of these little nuggets of information can go a really long way for men to understand that and I don't want to simplify a man going through erectile dysfunction because it impacts so many layers of self, right? But I want to just maybe make them like stop for a moment and just think about that proper breathing, proper posture, more than likely a visit or two to a pelvic floor physical therapist, and those trigger points or whatever is creating the tension in the pelvic floor can be fixed. And not a lot of people know that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to add to what sharing, all suffering is poignant from the perspective of, where I've witnessed things. And Alaska and Montana have a lot of folks whose suffering is quite intense because of that trifecta of fewer resources, stoicism, and kind of a culture around just pushing on. Then when folks do allow a healer or a member of the healing arts or a friend or a family member or a spouse or a loved one in, sometimes the degree of suffering is intense. And then when folks find out that this whole construct, that all of this requires drugs and surgery, it is inherently, there's so much vitality so immediately available through these tools you're describing. It's really good news, and what a time for good news. People benefit so much from good news right now around their own health, and I think they become just more of a source of light for themselves and others anytime they can heal. One other thing I flashed on before we share with folks where people can find you is that David and Austin Perlmutter have this book called Brainwash, and they talk about disconnection syndrome, disconnection from ourselves, disconnection from others, and disconnection from the earth. And if we take the premise that you've just outlined for us how to connect to this fundamental part of ourselves, which sets the stage to connecting meaningfully with others, and then the premise that this is how we're grounded, so this is on a metaphysical or spiritual level, this is how we connect to the earth. The work that you do resolves all three facets of disconnection syndrome. So I don't think the importance of it could be overstated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where can people find you?
So on the social platforms of YouTube or Instagram, TikTok, at the Cooch Ball is the best place to find me and, connect, right? I'm in my direct messages quite a bit, starting conversations with people, getting them directed. And should we tell your audience about the special?
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
So what we're doing is we're putting together a really special package for Dr. Rob's community. And so we're putting the Cooch Ball, and you could go to coochball.com and get your Cooch Ball, but I'm going to say don't, because here's why. We are giving an added free bonus gift if you use the link that Dr. Rob is providing you. The Cooch Ball comes with some online resources to help you. So you're not going through this on your own. All right. It's not like a DIY. It's like a DIY. We do this together. And so when you get your Cooch Ball, it comes with a pump. It comes with a little get started postcard, and you're going to get access to, for women, a course called Pelvic Floor or the Cooch Confident Training System. And for guys, the course is called Gooch Power. So that's going to come with your Cooch Ball, and that's what you would get if you ordered off my website. What you're going to get as an added bonus is one of my most favorite courses. It's kind of like a secret course. You can't buy it on my website. I like to just gift it when I, get invited to share my message on podcasts like Dr. Rob's. Is a 3-part course called the Cooch Fix Pack Mini. All right. So you might think that the Cooch and Gooch Ball is just like a one-trick pony and you just sit on it and it's good for pelvic floor. But I've actually been working with this for many, many years. And the Cooch Fix Pack Mini is 3 half-hour sessions with me One is how to use your cooch ball for upper body wellness. So we go through neck and jaw tension, how to use your cooch ball. We get, we work on a muscle called the QL in our low back, which is often really tight. There's a 30-minute session on lower body wellness. So we do a release for our psoas, which is so good, that hip flexor muscle. We work on sciatic issues through the muscle called the piriformis. We work on the calf muscle. And then the third session in that bonus course is all about gut health. So we actually, and that's actually how I came to shift my career from being a human resource consultant to being a wellness entrepreneur, was through my own wellness journey. I was on 11 medications when I was 21 years old, just to be told by my medical team that they believed the pain was in my head and I was seeking attention. And so my pain started with gut health. It quickly translated into into gut pain, which quickly translated into pelvic floor pain. And so we use the third session in the Cooch Fix Pack to go through all the ways you can use your cooch ball for gut health. So that is what we have for you today.
Thanks so much. I have a little twist at the end here. I've got my current kit for getting to do work like we did today is a Yeti directional mic. But if any of you picked up any construction noise, I'm sorry. They're refurbishing this building to be a daycare for hospital employees in Homer, Alaska. So there's this noble effort underway.
Wow.
And as I caught this wave with you today, I often find when I get to talk to a thought leader, there's an energy in that immediate discussion. And it's not a wave I want to get off and ask the person to please create that wave again, because there's an immediacy to it. And so this may sound like playing Pollyanna, but if you have listened to the podcast and it was a little frustrating, you might think of the instructions from the Zen teacher in Calcutta, whose student complained that the car noise was interrupting their meditation. And the Zen teacher asked the student, is the noise going to you, or are you going to the noise? So my apologies to Jana if any of those noises were a distraction, but hopefully everyone can stay with the wave, because this one was a really good one. You're bringing so much light. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't hear a stitch of that construction.
Oh, good. Oh, this makes a huge relief. Huge relief. Well, thanks again, Jana, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.